Hi guys, and welcome to volume 13 of my mini reviews. This series is basically where I review 7 films in the time that it would normally take me to review just one. As we're going along, there will be a recommended film of the week and also a stinker of the week, but I'll say which is which as we're going through them. And other than that, I don't think there's any more to say other than let's get on and quickly review some movies. This is a French film about a group of low-level crooks. They do this heist one day. There's 4 of them, 3 men and 1 woman. They escape into the countryside and they go to stay at this random motel. And they think they've got away, but actually they've just made their lives a hell of a lot worse, because this motel, which is actually more of a motel/farm, it's occupied by this weird cannibalistic family who just ensnare anybody who comes along. So it's a little bit like a Texas Chainsaw Massacre type scenario. This family are capturing people, putting them in the pigsty, and eventually serving them up at the dinner table. And yeah, we get a traditional Texas Chainsaw style dinner table scene in this, where you've got at least one character tied up at the end of the table and everybody else taunting her. So it very much it's very much a film that doesn't hide what its inspirations are. Some very colourful villains that reminded me of the Rob Zombie film 31. Some gory moments and kills that will definitely please gorehounds, but what lets the film down is just the amount of unrealistic escapes that the final girl gets. I mean, I was counting them up at one point. There were so many situations where I thought to myself, she'd never get out of that situation. This is ridiculous. So the film is really having to try hard to bend the laws of gravity to keep this final girl alive as long as she does. But still a good watch. I'd give it 3 out of 5. Worth catching if you see it on streaming, but definitely not a classic. So already we've arrived at our film of the video, film of the week. I'm slightly sad about that because this is probably the most well-known horror film in this batch of 7. Ideally, I'd prefer to give the award to some really unknown film that most people have not seen, but it is what it is. This is not a new film anymore. I think it came out a couple of years ago. It just so happens that I've only just got around to watching it. It's about a killer called the Grabber or the Hugger. I can't remember. He's a bloke who's driving around in a van just picking kids off the streets and taking them back to his house and keeping them locked up and then killing them. So very macabre subject matter, but I think the film handles its themes very maturely. It feels like a story that Stephen King wrote, and maybe he did for all I know. It's also a film that feels very much like Stranger Things, just in the time period that they're using here. I think it's set in the 70s, this film, and the look of the town. It really did remind me of that TV show. There's a twist about halfway through, which I was really worried about when it happened. I thought, oh my God, why did you do that? You potentially just ruined this film. But actually, my fears were unfounded because the rest of the film turned out really good. I'm going to give this one 4 out of 5. It truly is an excellent film. I'm a little bit worried about the sequel that they're apparently doing, because this really feels like a one and done film. I have no idea how they're going to carry this on, but whatever they do with that, at least this one's really great. So yeah, my video of the week, film of the week, I should say. This is not to be confused with the Robert Eggers film, The Witch. No, this is a Korean film, I think, with subtitles. And it's a weird one because it starts out feeling like one type of horror film and almost ends up in a completely different genre by the end of it. So to start off with, the story feels a little bit like Stephen King's Firestarter. We've got a young woman with special abilities that makes her almost impossible to kill. And she's on the run from this evil organisation who want to get her back so they can use her for their own nefarious purposes. So it's almost like a horror chase movie for a while, which I was kind of enjoying. But then in the second half, it just becomes a completely different film altogether. Like once this woman starts fighting back against this company, it almost becomes like The Matrix meets the horror genre. It feels like a live action version of some wacky Korean anime or something, with fight scenes happening with people able to move impossibly fast and kung fu happening and people dying all over the place, lots of gore. We're so far away from the horror genre by the end of this film that I thought to myself, wow, I wouldn't normally watch a film like this, but I kind of feel like I've been tricked into it, because the first half an hour feels like a normal horror film. But I don't know, this whether you want to watch this film will be entirely down to your taste. I'm still going to give it 3 out of 5, because I think with what it's trying to do, it does very well. I'm just not entirely sure it's for me. There is a sequel, which I probably won't watch, but I don't know. Give it a try if you feel like you might want to. It's not on the level of Robert Eggers' The Witch, though. I can't remember if I came across this one on Amazon Prime or Shudder, so sorry for the lack of information, but I think it's a fairly recent film. It's about this couple. They're travelling down the motorway late at night, and they stop at a gas station. We call them petrol stations in the UK. They go inside, and then suddenly the petrol station becomes under siege by some hidden sniper from God knows where he is. Because it's dark outside, they can't see where the bullets are coming from. But they're trapped in this petrol station, and they've no idea why a random sniper is firing bullets at a petrol station. There's already one dead person inside. Really interesting setup, and I was intrigued for a while as to where this film was going to go. Unfortunately, a lot of the twists that you get in the second half, they didn't really interest me. I started to lose interest in the film, actually, the longer it went on. I think this would have been a better film as a short, as part of an anthology, because I think it would make a really good 25, 30 minute story, not so much a full-length feature. I'm going to give it 2 out of 5. It's not a disaster, but unless you've got tons of time on your side, I would probably suggest giving this one a swerve. But it's not the stinker of the week. We haven't come to that yet. This is about a lesbian couple who go on holiday in America. It's to like a lodge in the middle of the countryside somewhere. They're Americans holidaying in America. But they get terrorised by a group of scoundrels living on a farm nearby who are basically picking on this couple just because they're gay. What they want to do is torture this couple, kill them, and sell the footage on the black web. Real nasty stuff. We'd already seen them previously kill a male gay couple in the prologue, so we know what they're about. So this film's got a lot of nasty undertones. There's hate crimes going on in this film, which means it won't be for everybody. But for me, that just made the eventual fight back a lot more satisfying, because I really felt for these girls being, picked on just because of their sexuality. Plus, if you just look at the slasher film mechanics in this film, it's actually a pretty reasonable film anyway. There's nothing too unrealistic about the action or the situations, unlike Frontiers. So I kind of enjoyed this one. It doesn't rise too far above mediocre, but it's decent. I'll give it 3.5 out of 5. This is another meat and potatoes slasher film, and it's also one that I was aware had a little bit of a reputation as I came into it. I'd heard a few rumours and whisperings that this was a really, really solid slasher. It's about 2 women and a guy who go to one of their parents' homes, somewhere rural. It's a really fancy countryside manor, and they're all kind of settled in to just enjoy a bit of peace and quiet. And then they get terrorised by some killer who's randomly floating around outside. And I can't take the film, I can't take the plot any further than that, because you're meant to discover it for yourself. I really enjoyed this. It is quite exciting, but my pulse never started racing as much as I wanted it to race. There are a few too many situations where characters make dreadful decisions. They run in one direction when you're just thinking, what are you doing? Go that way. And things like that, where I just couldn't fathom why they were doing what they were doing, And also there were some moments where characters survived when they shouldn't. And overall, I just feel like the writing with this film was not as tight as it could have been. And yet I still kind of enjoyed it. I'm going to give it 3.5 out of 5. But it's a disappointing 3.5 out of 5 because of the reputation of the film, whereas the previous one we were talking about, The Retreat, that was a really positive 3.5 out of 5 because it was a complete unknown of a film that I just picked randomly off Prime or whatever. Our final film today just happens to be the stinker of the week, and it also just happens to be the only film I've seen at the cinema so far in 2024. Jesus, what a bad start, because this is a truly horrendous horror film. It's like a cross between The Conjuring and The Ring. It's about this family who move into a house that has a swimming pool, and the swimming pool just happens to be haunted, but the story is just so painfully dull. You can see all the scares coming about 30 seconds before they happen. The characters are awful. The story goes into some really unsatisfying directions, and I was just so painfully bored sat in the cinema watching this. I'd intended to make this a full-length review, as I often try to do for the films that I see at the cinema, but walking home after watching this, I thought to myself, nope, this one's going in the mini review section. Just could not face planning a full review for this. My apologies. It saddens me that films like this get shown at the cinema and they get loads of money pumped into the marketing and showcased all around the world as some of the best stuff that horror has to offer, when really great horror films, a lot of the time, they never see the insides of a cinema. Films like my personal favourite from 2023, Influencer, which barely struggled to get a release on Shudder. This film, by God, it's really bad. I'm not exaggerating to say it's one of the worst horror films I think I've ever seen in the cinema. It's truly rank. It's been out a couple of weeks now, so if you haven't seen it by this point, probably you're not intending to see it, but if it's still showing near you, please don't. Just save yourself the money. Right, that's a disappointing end for today, but let's finish on a positive by remembering the film of the week, which is The Black Phone, 4 out of 5. If you've not checked out that already, then I encourage you to do so. And I will wrap it up for today. I'll be back soon. I think my next video is going to be a review of the Hammer film Twins of Evil. So until next time, cheerio, bye-bye.